Thanks for joining us for another episode of Plowtalk. I'm your host, Matthew Bane, and I am here yet again with my dad, Phil Bane, and my brother, Jason Bane, CEO and president of Bane Welker, respectively. And my position is just host, so nothing too fancy there in my title. But we have these gentlemen here, and we are yet again joined by an expert in their field within Bane Welker, and this time we have Stacy Stewart. How you doing, Stacy?
Good, sir. You?
I'm doing pretty well.
Yep.
So Stacy's got about 3 cameras on him right now, and so you'll have to give him a little bit of slack. He's feeling the pressure. But I wanted to go ahead and start off. We're continuing in on a series that I think we're basically calling career progressions within Bane Welker, and we're meeting up with, again, some folks within Bane Welker who have been around for a while and transitioned through Bane Welker from different positions, whether that's like Luke and Matt Austin transitioning from maybe a technician up to being a manager of some sort, or even like we've mentioned before, my dad and brother really filling a lot of different hats within the business. But today, again, we're with Stacy, and Stacy, you've been lately, at least, quite a bit in the AFS world. And before we get there, though, I'd love to hear the background. How did you get with Bane Welker? What'd you do before that? If all that good stuff, and we'll start getting into the progression of what you've done here.
Okay.
If anything, have you done anything?
No.
Okay.
So as far as these guys are concerned, I've done a lot.
Yeah.
So, no, but I started out I went to Purdue, got an ASM degree. Before that, I'd kind of started out at the university and didn't think I really liked it. So I moved away to another state and worked at a dealership for a few years, and then realized working's not the easiest, compared to school. So I went back and finished my degree. And when I first came out of Purdue, I went to work for AgChem here in Lebanon at that time frame, and was there for right about 3 years before AGCO purchased them. And when AGCO purchased them, we all thought we were going to get better pay, benefits, life was good. About 2 months go by, and they say, "See you guys later. We don't need you anymore."
Oh, nice. The complete opposite.
Yeah. So that kind of led me to looking for jobs, and I can't remember the feller's name up in Peru that used to have a. Yeah. Yep.
Headhunter.
Yes, yeah. Correct. Yep. So he got me in touch with you guys, and basically come down and did our first interview, and I'll say that first interview was a little bit intimidating, because I can remember setting up here at Wingate and there being, you two for sure, and Fruity, and I don't remember if Jeff was there, and some others. There's 4 or 5 of you guys like in a semicircle around me,
Were they holding wrenches?
No, they were asking all kinds of questions, and you just kind of keep popping your head around trying to answer all the questions.
Yeah. Kind of like right now.
Yeah, more or less. So.
Very similar.
Yep. So once I accepted the position, I originally started out as the service manager here at Lebanon, and most of you guys know Jim Robinson, of course. Yep. Jim and I, after the first year, kind of come to a conclusion that wasn't working out the best. So I moved into the parts world and was there for roughly 3 to 4 years before the precision planning stuff kind of started catching on. And David Reeves was our first full-time guy that we had. Mm-hmm. And then we had Ryan Zook come on board shortly after that. And at that point, we kind of realized that me being at the counter kind of selling this stuff wasn't the most beneficial, and need to be out in the world like those guys were. So I made the transition over, and that's kind of where it all began. So
very good. Yeah. What do you gentlemen remember of that mafia moment when you had them in the room?
I remember it was after work. It was.
Yeah.
I think it actually got dark while we were doing, or I don't remember what time.
Been about this time of year.
Was, but
yeah.
Was this time of year? Okay.
Yeah, because it was November 01 when I started.
Yeah.
Okay. So by the time you left, the sun was down and it was dark outside. So we ran you through the ringer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all had our hair wasn't quite as light colored as it is today.
Yeah.
Either,
No, sure.
if I remember right.
Yeah,
So,
same
Yeah.
here.
There was some more of it, and not quite the same color.
Yeah.
so
What along those lines, this is different than what we've talked about with the other gentlemen that we've had on so far in this regard, in that you're talking about something that was still at the time, very new to the, relatively speaking, in the grand scheme of things with agriculture. And you eventually got to your position now, so obviously you didn't start there, but remind me again, what was your technical title when you first started?
I don't know if there truly was a technical
Okay.
title one. So, like I say, I started out as the service manager, then, like I say, moved into parts. But
Yeah.
when we first started into the AFS world,
yeah.
there was more or less just
Yeah, I don't
guys
know.
filling
Yeah.
the role that,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know
that's
that
what
we
I was
had. Yeah, I don't
thinking,
know that we had a title
I don't
then
think there was.
for those guys.
Pretty much a technician for AFS. is
Yeah,
what it
Yeah.
amounted
yeah,
to, so.
that'd be a safe
I'm getting my chronology wrong, so I do though want to kind of skip to that portion though, and we'll go back to the other segments, different roles you fulfilled, but that one's a pretty unique one, like you guys were just saying. It's something that you didn't really. It was new waters, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
what were you thinking through when you had Stacy transition into that, space, and what were you?
Well, I just remember, he hit on it. We hired David Reeves. It would have been early in the 2000s as well there, I believe. And you could see this thing starting to snowball, right? It was starting to grow. If you go back a little bit, Matthew, like in 1995, Jim Robinson actually worked for Case IH at that point.
Right. Okay.
And he put the first yield monitor in a 2144 combine at the Crawfordsville location for Case IH in this whole region. So he came out as a field rep and installed that in 1995.
Yeah.
And Stacy said he came on as a service manager in 01.
Yep.
And then shortly, wasn't too many years, say half a dozen years, transitioned into AFS. So say within a decade, we went from an old black box yield monitor.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then somewhere in between there, we started doing some easy steers and
Yep.
easy pilots and
Yep.
things. And then eventually this CAN bus system comes out on like 1998 MX Magnum tractors, which was really new to Case IH at that point in time. And that's when things really started to change. And we seen the need, and that's why we brought like David Reeves in to kind of head up that group. And he was the one and only there for a while.
Yep.
And then we brought in Ryan Zook shortly thereafter. And then it progressed in. We've seen this thing growing.
Yep.
And it progressed into getting Stacy involved now. Because you'd been selling some of that product over the counter here, if I remember
Mark Fruits
right.
and I remember the first thing we went to, actually went to like a Trimble training.
Yeah.
We'd went over to Dayton, Ohio back, like say, early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming, but it's been there for quite a while.
Because I think at that time, Stacy, I think Mark was a parts manager at Crawfordsville and maybe installed like the first Trimble system on John Gable's 325 Steiger or something. Sound about right. And then Wayne McCutcheon came on board with it shortly thereafter on a MX Magnum that he pulled a Kinsey. He had a Kinsey planter at the time. I kind of remember that because I think Amy even got involved in helping you guys a little bit, trying to get these things to drive straight back then. It was so new.
I remember going. I worked one of those summers, and when David was going out to one of the fields to set up a combine or something, I remember that first feeling of seeing that steering wheel turning itself.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a crazy world now. Like, going down, I think we were just right on the edge of the road in a field. Just, you think, you're like, well, what if it goes off into
what happens? What am I going to do?
You're constantly kind of wanting to grab at it. But,
Well, we had a field day, didn't we, over by Terre Haute? David put together, I think.
I had one, if I remember right,
I forget whose farm that was on, between Rockville and Terre Haute, somewhere in that vicinity. And got a lot of interest in the product then. So.
It's when that all first came out, like when I was approached to do this, I got those guys, not necessarily these two guys, but I got Jim and Dale, those guys that say, look, if this doesn't pan out, if it's just a passing fancy, I still got a job, So it was like new to the world, kind of stuff at that time. So
yeah, it was really foreign.
It's kind of primitive too when you think about it, looking back now, because it had that drive mechanism.
Yeah, the little foam wheel on it.
Had to touch the steering wheel.
Yep.
And actually, I don't know how it worked, but you guys made it work. So.
Yeah. Well, you even think back to the old black box yield monitor, right? Like an old analog.
Yeah.
Almost like having a bag phone, right? And we carry these things around today. And
I mean, you've got a monitor that'll have a 1 megabyte card, and that was just too much information for it. It couldn't handle it.
My cameras has 128 gigs.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
it's crazy.
But to tell you how important that yield monitor thing was, we had a customer up by Romney who was running 12188 combine, I think at the time, on 4,800 acres, and his yield monitor quit, and he stopped in the field. He said, I got to have somebody out here to fix this like now.
Yep.
And you think back, well, it's just a yield monitor. The combine was working fine. Why didn't you just keep driving?
Keep on going. Yeah.
But he was so into the data collection that he said, I ain't going another foot to get that thing fixed.
Get her, yeah.
Yeah, that and that's a big part of it. I mean, we can get into that here in a bit, but the whole data, and I mean, that's a whole controversy too, right? Like who owns the data and all that stuff nowadays.
Sure.
But something I do want to step back to the beginning when you started at Bane Welker is again that progression, and I guess what you joked with Jim Robinson, right? Saying move on to something else or whatever. But how did those transitions happen? I guess in terms of getting those opportunities to change titles or whatever you want to say, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the opportunity. I mean that's one of the things I've always given Jim credit to, and a lot of my loyalty to him because I mean he could just as easily went, hey, this ain't working, hit the highway.
He could have done the AGCO thing.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Said, hey, this ain't panning out, but
but he saw value in Stacy.
Exactly. That's what That's what I feel like. That he saw enough value in me being here still. That I had the potential for something else. And then eventually that potential led to something else on top of that. I mean, it's been one of those things. I'm glad that I got the opportunity to do that, just for the mere fact that I think it helped me grow and experience different things, being more involved in business, seeing, hey, it's just not service side. Hey, there's a whole parts world involved, and it's not just one piece of the pie that runs the show, so.
Yeah, that's a good perspective too, because I don't think, I guess, as I've learned about, say, the parts side versus the service side, and like you said, how they actually complement as well each other. If you're stuck in one segment, it's like, say you're a technician for a number of years, you may have kind of a tunnel vision as to how the business runs, right? Like who's actually the most important or something like that, right? But it's good to have that perspective of parts and service. And then from that, you actually have that experience before you got into the AFS stuff.
Correct.
So you kind of understand what you're asking for when you ask for it to an extent, other than the newness of AFS, I suppose.
It was probably a good pathway for him being a service manager and then moving into parts and then pulling the two together to working through the AFS side of it.
If I remember right, at that time, when he took that service manager position, it's not like Lebanon is today in terms of, there were a lot of challenges. That was after we'd acquired.
What year was it?
It was around 01-ish.
So I think you guys came in
97.
97. So it's about 3 or 4 years before.
And we didn't get Jim right out of the gate, so we didn't get Jim to like around 2000-ish there, I think.
He came. So my progression was the first few weeks I spent with Fruity up at Wingate.
Yeah.
And then I come down to Crawfordsville for 4 or 5 months, whatever it was, until Jim came. Right. Then we both came over to Lebanon at the same time. So
So from like 97 till we finally got like Jim and Stacy, there were a lot of challenges here at the Lebanon location. So I know Stacy got to experience, he came in.
Because Mark was coming over quite a bit when I first started here.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
had
we'd
been
been
before
through
that,
two or
yeah.
three service managers at that time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we talked to Steve Hine earlier. He was the old service manager here for 20 some years
Right.
when Laura had it, and then Case Power and Equipment. But he had transitioned into sales and didn't want to go back to
Didn't
service.
want to go back,
so
yeah.
He was,
And that was right before we came.
yeah, that
Came
was
in
just
here.
prior to
Yeah.
us taking over in February of '97. So there was somewhat of a void in the service management side of the business, and like I say, we'd gone through a couple of guys and didn't work out.
Yeah, I picked a young guy at that time frame. And you had some guys in the shop that had a whole lot more experience at the time frame. So
Well, you would have had, you'd been trying to manage like Gary Dale.
yeah,
and,
that's
and
what I mean.
guys like
The
that.
guys that had
Yeah.
been doing it for pushing 40 years at that point, you know what I mean? So
There was another guy here that was a good combine mechanic, Jerry
Oh yeah,
Blankenship.
Blankenship, Jerry
Yep.
Blankenship.
Yep.
And I remember, having to deal with Jerry, even over at Crawfordsville, and he would have been challenging. So I guess kind of my point
Getting
is
experience,
Stacy actually got to experience, some challenging times bringing a location on, even though it was 3 or 4 years later, we still hadn't
Out of the front.
truly
pan,
got
out of the fire kind of
right.
yeah, still getting the growing pains,
Yeah,
for lack of a better
yeah.
word, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, what Stacy, in your experience with something that's been common that we've talked about is that opportunity factor of kind of like what you were saying, that instead of just kicking them down the highway or whatever, giving you an opportunity in a different position. What's your experience with Bane Welker in that regard? You think there's a lot of great opportunity in terms of
Oh yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, we're always looking for different people in different positions. It's and just because you've got that, like you said earlier, that mindset of hey, I'm a service guy, doesn't mean that if you're wanting to move and learn that there's not opportunities here to do that. I mean, I think as long as you can show that you're going to provide a benefit for the company, there's always opportunities to grow and change what you're doing. There's too many guys, I think, get in the mindset of, I can only go from service to sales. Well, not necessarily. I mean, you can move sideways into the parts or into the AFS or into maybe some sort of accounting if you can show your worth there. Even, you know what I mean? So I think there's plenty of opportunities here, not to just pigeonhole yourself into something. It all depends on what you want to make of yourself. So
yeah, that's another aspect has been responsibility. We talked about that a lot with like Matt and Luke. And do you think if there are folks who, and maybe just even in general, just employment in general, I guess, but do you think there's guys who shy away from opportunities because they don't want the responsibility, or that they just don't know the opportunities there?
yeah, I mean, I think some guys they might fear that change. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit to it. I mean, there's times that you get comfortable where you're at, and then you see that opportunity, and then you might doubt yourself whether or not you're capable of doing that job. And well, if I move into that role and it doesn't pan out, kind of like the same scenario with what I had years ago. Am I still okay here? Or is it going to be, you changed, you're out, kind of thing. So yeah, so some guys I think have that fear that there may be not always the opportunities, but I think sometimes people just don't know. They think they're pigeonholed and they don't know that they've got that opportunity. But then I'll also put it out there that you got to speak up, though. I mean, that's upon you.
Exactly. So. Yeah, and that's a good point. Taking actual ownership, right?
Yep.
Even in the jobs I've had or kind of the stuff I'm doing currently, the more you're willing to take ownership, as one guy I listen to a lot says, responsibility flows to those who want it. You know. And so if you're seeking it, then you're probably going to get that opportunity, right?
It's there somewhere if you just look for it. So
I'm not sure this is how this happened, but if I recall correctly, Jim Robinson, like Jason said, was a service rep for the company for Case IH. So he had developed these relationships at various dealerships. And I think he found out that Dale Whirling's wife was being transferred to Indianapolis as a
Rolls
nurse.
Royce. Yep.
And he thought, you know what? He knew Dale from previous experiences with Case IH.
Yep.
He thought, you know, Dale would be a good fit here at Lebanon. So I think that's somehow he moved the checkerboard around a little bit and shifted you over here and thought,
Chess
you know.
at that point.
Yeah, it was chess.
Yeah.
So,
Well, actually, in between there, didn't we have
Fisher.
Mike Fisher
Yeah.
in between, and then Mike left and went to I can't think.
Woodmiser.
Woodmiser.
Yep.
Yeah.
Woodmiser.
Woodmiser.
Yes, and that's when Dale.
kind of transitioned in. Yeah, because like I say, I think it was about a year there or so that Mike was here.
Yeah.
yeah, Mike wasn't here all that long, and then he made the move. And then I don't know. I just bring that up because I think it's interesting how these outside relationships that other people had were able to complement what we've got today with.
Well, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that get put together, right? Like you have somebody that's, you know, getting kicked out of their previous job, right? Needs a new job, or like you said, a wife is getting a change in job, and you just never know what's going to happen to actually bring those.
Well, it takes 4 or 5 years to find out where everybody's going to land, but I think in this example, we did pretty well. And it wasn't that we did well; it's the people were.
Yep.
I think we've got everybody in the right place right now.
Well, I think it shows too, like our customers like to see the same people. Our customers get really nervous when you have new people in and out all the time, right? They get really nervous. They want to be comfortable, and they build trust with someone at a location. I think if you look at Lebanon, and we kind of talk about the history of Stacy coming into Lebanon to where he's at now, that core's still here.
Yeah.
I mean, Stacy, Jim, Dale.
Terry's still here in the
Terry's
parts.
here.
You know. Steve's still here.
I mean, Ryan Scott didn't come on too much like. He's been here 16 or 17 years now.
Ryan's actually been here 6 months longer than me.
Okay, so it is longer. So
Yeah, he was just
that
a kid
whole
when
group.
He cut and run from Ag Chem when they told us that if we stayed, we'd get better benefits, and him and I got the exact same thing. So,
and you know, Ryan's kind of another one of those that, you know, whether you want to say it's a side lateral move or whether it's a progressive move, went from being a technician to now he's working in sales here at Lebanon. So moved out of that role about a year ago.
Yeah.
So
well, all that is proving the point that we've talked about on other podcasts, which is that it's really the attitude that determines things. Because sales is, I mean, yeah, you may get to know the customers when you're in service, so it may make the sales transition easier, but those are still two completely different.
Correct.
I mean, you're still serving people either way, but they're totally different ball games. And so it shows that it's mainly the attitude of the person going into that position. And that's what I'd like to get into next is we touched on it a little bit already with AFS, but I do want to go into that because it's unique in the sense that you're going into the frontier, you're taking on that responsibility to try something new. Talk through that progression in terms of from when you entered AFS to where we're at now in how we're serving customers and even your responsibility and role in it and all that.
So when it all first started out, I mean, like you were saying, Phil, is I mean, we were dealing with the old Easy Guide Plus, which was a light bar with a little tiny black and white screen on it, you know, with an easy steer on, you know. I mean, I can remember the first one I installed was over on a farm over by Noblesville, and we were just all day long messing with it, trying to figure it out. And, you know, at that time frame, we were like, you know, this is complicated. Why can't we figure it out? And, you know, but as time has gone along, I look back at that and go, oh, good God, you know, a 2-year-old could have installed that and understood it, you know. But at that time frame, it was such a new thing. I mean, we didn't have even the support then. You couldn't call somebody and say, hey, you know, what do I need to do? We're having these issues.
And look it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely no YouTube. I mean, so you had really limited resources. So at that time frame, there was a lot of learning on the fly. I mean, and figuring it out yourself, and I hate to say somewhat disassembling things, going, okay, so this is how it works. Put it back together, you know, kind of thing is. as opposed to now, as time has gone along, there's more and more support from like the Trimbles and the Ag Leaders and the C&Hs, Raven and so many of the other products that we sell. It's been kind of nice for me to almost say grow with it, because I understand and seen the background of it. So now when I run into an issue with this newer stuff, I kind of understand where it came from to begin with. So and the concept is still kind of the same. It's changed tremendously, but some of these new guys, they get into it. And now, granted, a lot of the younger kids these days are into technology already and had cell phones and laptops when they were, elementary school. But they, I think, sometimes kind of missed out on some of that, growing pains, for lack of better words,
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like the just in general. I thought I saw somebody out there. Computers in general, you have the generation, whether it's I think of even I read a biography, or I guess it would have been an autobiography on the Snowden guy who he controversy there obviously, but he talks about in that biography of learning computers, learning the internet when it first started out, and that just kept progressing into his knowledge. So to your point, having that base knowledge when things are a little simpler, even though it may not seem like it, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure has helped a lot.
It's funny for me to say this. For you, for example, I mean, you didn't grow up with computers,
Right.
You and I are a little closer in age. I mean, I was a senior in high school before we had a computer lab that we could, go down and use for an hour a day. So I'm kind of at that age where I'm not quite old enough not to have been in it, but still young enough to have some, experience with it. But the same aspect, not quite old enough to be out of it or have like the young kids knowing it like at the back of their hand. So I mean, so it's kind of been a challenge for me at times. I mean. I was kidding these guys earlier and telling them, I bought my first flat screen TVs last year. I mean, your technology guy here is not the most technology savvy guy, coming to the world. But I mean, I didn't care much about the world, and its technology. I needed to know what was here, and that's all that mattered. So.
So who was the guy at Noblesville that you installed the first easy to?
Well, at that time frame, it was Ron Neese. Over at Frankton, and we were down at some ground that him and Wilson Gatewood farmed together.
I had a feeling it might have been Ron. I want to tell you a little story about Ron. When he and I talked, you were talking about this age difference between, being raised with computers versus your age, which you kind of was. Ron is a little older than I am, and he caught me over here one day at an open house, and he said, Phil, I never thought that I would ever do any of this technology stuff. But he said putting that auto steer on that combine of mine was the best money I ever spent.
Yep.
He said, when you're driving west on a late afternoon, evening, that sun's coming down, the dust coming up off the reel, he said, you can't see anything. Yep. And he said, I could push that button. He said, you wouldn't believe the amount of stress it took off my mind, and
to be able to kind of focus on
it. He said, I can look for rocks. I can keep my eye on the machine and make sure
you're not
everything's
overflowing in the back.
Instead of squinting and gripping that steering wheel like it's gonna leap out of your hands.
I tell you, I mean, guys of that age, you would think not. Hey, they don't want nothing to do with it, but I'll swear. I'd bet a majority of the guys I deal with are probably 60 plus. I mean, I know the average farmer is, is that kind of age range, but they seem to take to it as much as the young guys do. I mean, once they get that taste of it, and
they probably have an appreciation for it because they know what it was like.
Correct.
Where you know what it was like to be fatigued.
Yep.
People may think it's easy, right? But if you're going across hundreds of acres in a day, you get fatigued even though it's just.
It's mental stress, but
in a straight line or whatever. But
it's kind of like what Stacy was describing, like he and I, where we're at in terms of age versus our dad or someone
even yourself. I mean,
we kind of have an appreciation that would be different than a 20-year-old coming into the business today because we do remember when all you had was landline phones, you know, and we do remember when there were bag phones, and we do remember combines without yield monitors and so on. And the kid coming in to do AFS technology today is coming in to work on Pro 1200s right out of the gate and AFS Connect, right? So in my mind, I'm wondering if he's coming in or she's coming in to work on that technology today, will that technology be like the Easy Guide?
Yeah.
You know, it makes me wonder. 20
Probably
years
will
from
be
now.
at some point in time.
So
It's heading that way. I mean, if you look at other industries, whether it's you look at Tesla and how their cars are driving on the road by themselves, or you look at just different computer companies and all that stuff, right? Or the military, which you've always brought up, that they're usually about 10 years ahead of what agriculture ends up applying. It's gonna get pretty wild, at least for our minds.
Yeah, it's gonna get really interesting.
I'm sure Ron Neese wouldn't mind letting go of the steering wheel though at 4 mile an hour versus one going down the interstate.
Yeah, exactly.
He might have a little bit of a reservation. I'm not sure I'm ready for this.
I'll tell you what, though, I do look forward to having a car that can safely drive itself, so I can take a nap on those long drives.
I don't know about that.
I'd be very comfortable with it, because either if I wreck and die, I'm going to heaven, I'll be happier anyway, and if I don't, then I get there and I'm well rested. But anyway, that's the younger generation talking. Isn't it?
I don't know. I think I'd be the guy looking around taking pictures.
Exactly right. Or honestly, it would just be nice for productivity, because you could just maybe sit there on your laptop, still keep an eye on the steering wheel, obviously, and get some more stuff done. But
I think Matthew, about like that generation, like our dad's generation. I think of like Harold Reeves as well, which is David's dad, that really adopted technology early as well, which David influenced that heavily. But I think it comes back to guys like Stacy really did a nice job, and still do today, of working with those guys and getting them comfortable with that technology to where it does seem seamless now for them. But I think if you didn't have the right people working with those folks, it would be tougher, I think, to sell. I mean, Stacy, I know he probably gets 200 or 300 phone calls a day when we get into season, and so does the rest of the crew.
It seems like 300.
I've counted before. It's been a legit 150 plus. So
But I think they've been there to help these guys through some of the simplest, what today are simple tasks at one time weren't, and
that is another big factor, because what was that like, I guess, in trying to troubleshoot when you're just starting that off? Because now maybe you have it a little bit more like a well-oiled machine in terms of knowing, you go back, I don't know if it's on an iPad or something, you go back three pages or whatever, you kind of got to memorize it.
Yeah, exactly.
What was it like trying to get customers comfortable back when you were starting?
It was rough. Just like you said, that concept of let go of the wheel.
Yeah.
You're trying to convince somebody. I swear to you, it's gonna be all right. Don't worry about it. I've done this before.
4 mile an hour.
When we first started out with, like, say, some of the simple systems, guys could see the steering wheel move. That was great. They knew it was doing something. But once we moved in, like, some of the CAN-based stuff where there was no external pieces moving, it became like a whole new learning curve again, because guys didn't see the steering wheel move. They didn't see a remote being stroked to lift the implement out of the ground. So it was all back to that. Oh my God, what am I? Just leave it alone. It's definitely been. It's had its challenges on different things. I mean, guys trying to apply certain rate of be it chemicals or products or something. It's like, just let it. It's all right. I promise you. Instead of getting at the end of the field going, okay, need to check it and see if it's right. Is it right? It is. Just trust me on it, Right. But the early days of no resources, like, say, couldn't just flip through the iPad real quick, or flip through, even like the new Pro 1200s have the ops manual built into them. You could flip through, how do I do this kind of thing? Them days weren't there. I mean, you'd get the old book out and you'd be thumbing through, trying to figure it out. And
all I ever think about with the old books and stuff, there at Wingate, we had that projector thing. The slide.
Oh, yeah, the microfiche.
I used to just play with that. I had no idea what I was looking at, but I'd get a slide and put it in there. The guys were probably mad at me. I probably disorganized the slides. They were looking for something, but
That's another example of your progression, though.
Yeah,
I mean, how things have
right.
changed. I mean, you're looking at a
Isn't
microfiche,
that crazy?
trying to keep from going blind looking at,
What was I guess looking back on all those things and the years that you've been here at Bane Welker, what are some I don't know, maybe a little bit of advice you give to the younger guys starting out fresh here at Bane Welker who I don't know, maybe they do have a great attitude, or maybe they are frustrated regardless of that.
For me, one of the biggest things is if you've got questions or you've got an issue or something, say something.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always felt really comfortable talking to you guys. If I've got something to ask or say, I mean, you've got to have some respect for who's your boss, and who's not. But for the younger guys, I mean, I think there's times that guys are afraid to just even ask questions. I mean, what's the worst you're going to be told? No. I mean,
Yeah.
so I mean,
Or no dumbass.
Well, see, now here I am. I'm trying to be good with keeping the language.
I'm just being real. Yeah.
No, it's just the young guys just don't be afraid. I mean, that's one of the things that we've learned and I'm gonna say in our department is you can't be afraid. Mm-hmm. What's the worst you could do? I mean, start from scratch and start all over. So I mean, I think there's a lot of things in this business, just do it. Mm-hmm. If you're wrong, well, we'll fix it. Don't worry about it. So,
sure. Any thoughts there, gentlemen, on anything he said?
No, I feel like my dad and Grandpa really set that precedence, and hopefully I do the same thing. But I think just being approachable, and we've always tried to be, and I feel like it's cascaded down. I feel like guys like Stacy and other leaders in the company like him are approachable. So I would just encourage, to Stacy's point, younger people coming on board, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to get engaged. It'll be okay.
Do you also encourage the I guess especially what I'm getting at is like in terms of wanting to progress within the business and have kind of a goal. Maybe they have a goal one day. I want to be a manager, service manager. I'm a technician right now. Do you encourage that as well? If somebody's starting out, like, hey, what would it take for me to eventually be?
I think some of our best people have come up through the ranks. We talked about this earlier. That's the preference. I think.
I would rather have that than
absolutely.
Like my dad said earlier today. I mean, our track record, bringing somebody from the outside in that doesn't have any experience in this business isn't the greatest.
I mean, they may have an ag degree and a resume this long, but that doesn't mean they know the Bane Welker way or the Case IH way or all the traditional stuff that we've grown up and gotten used to. And then you got some really good guy maybe, and he's got a nice resume, but is he a fit? A lot of times they're not. So.
I mean, if I can give an example of how progression works in the organization.
Yeah.
The first time I met you, I kid you not. I mean, it to me to show you that you can progress from being in the shop. I mean, first time I met Jason, I remember it was some old 70 series tractor. Pokes his head out and says, "Hey, here I am. I think you were the service manager at the time."
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's a guy I can respect, and then watch the progression as you've gone up through the business, I mean, just proving the point that you can start anywhere and become anything, so.
Well, and he grew up with the 70 series when he was a kid, but on the other hand, he'd never worked on them. So he always, when he'd tear a power shift apart, he'd sometimes ask me to come back in the shop to make sure he was stacking that clutch pack correctly, and.
Yeah, it's back to, not being afraid to ask.
Right.
And ask somebody that's done it. And, and I think, we have a lot of folks that way in the organization today.
Yeah.
So.
And we recognize, everybody makes mistakes. One of the, I've made so many, I'll give you one example of one that I did. But
one today or
one? This was years ago when I was first transitioning into sales. I sold a 3594 tractor to a guy, and I forgot to add the duals, the cost of the duals into the deal. Well, he thought he was getting the duals, and I couldn't tell him he wasn't getting the duals. I thought, oh crap! I just lost $2,500
Yep.
Yeah.
because I forgot to price them out.
Yeah.
But I gave them to him. Didn't make any money on the deal.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah.
it was something
some
I had
of
to do.
So yeah, we all do. And I mean,
Those good
I'll be the
coaching
first to,
moments.
I've forgotten cables that, hey, I need this extra cable to go on with what I'm doing,
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we can make those big of mistakes every day. At some point, you got to say, look, this ain't working.
But you got to learn from them.
But you learn from it.
Yeah,
And
exactly,
then the
yeah.
next time, you don't forget the duels. So.
Like you're kidding yourself if you don't think you're ever going to make a mistake, you know.
Well, that's the guy I work with. He talks a lot about a kind of the filter that you build throughout life. You especially when you stay with the same, at least generally the same career and stuff. You make that mistake. That goes into the filter as, did he want duels? You just automatically when you make that big of a sting on yourself, right? You start to ask those questions. Part of what we're doing, Stacy, and going around right now is talking about is going around the fact that it's going to be 55 years for the business here, and I guess I wanted to get your thoughts on just the business in general as it's progressed, and maybe even specifically talking about really the most recent transition, I guess, other than acquiring the new locations in Ohio. Before that, to my mind, would be the employee-owned aspect. What are your thoughts on that in terms of your experience here at Bane Walker?
Before we get into the whole ESOP thing, when I started, there was 4 locations. I mean, so to me that whole family feel, was part of the reason why I liked coming to work here, And I feel like even though we've grown tremendously, that feel's still there, and that's, I guess, kind of where that ESOP thing comes in for me, is that I felt like it's still that family feel, that they still care, hey, these guys are, I hate to say, looking at you like you're your children, but hey, we're trying to do the best for you, to give you an opportunity to continue instead of like my experience at AgChem, a bigger company bought you, hey, great if you stay. If you don't, they don't care. I mean, I feel like it is definitely not been the scenario here. Even though, like I say, with 15 locations now, I mean, it's still has that kind of that family feel. I mean, I guess I can't speak for everybody outside getting further away, but at least the central core, the original stores. I mean, it's still, to me, it feels like it's still there.
Yeah.
So we don't ever want to lose that either, because I think it's important. It's part of our core value. So it's like you can't do that.
Yeah,
I think it's almost made itself just part of our DNA. That's just part of who Bane Walker is now. Is that family feel? Even if you're, a couple 100 miles away in Utica, Ohio, there's those folks over there, have their own family feel to them if you go over there, and it really blends in very well with like you said, the original 4 locations.
Yep.
So I just think that's important to your point.
I think the ESOP brought about some opportunities too to kind of share, all of our successes. We all contributed something to this thing, but now you have an opportunity to share in that success from a monetary standpoint.
correct.
That is pretty much a gift because you didn't have it before.
Correct. I didn't do anything for it. I didn't go, hey, Phil and Jason, here's, $5,000 I want in. I mean, that's what's
You
saying.
still got your 401k and you got your other benefits as far as that goes. We didn't take something away and then substitute it with an ESOP. It's like, this is a plus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, anything else you'd want to mention while we got Stacy here?
No, I just appreciate everything that Stacy's done over the years, and it's been fun to watch, and hopefully equally fun for him.
It's been fun and interesting and challenging.
So, I mean, it's like family, like he said earlier, and I think I mentioned this when we were with Steve. Family has its bumps in the road. But one thing about family, you stick together and you work through that, and I think I think this company's has done that generally every time.
Yeah.
We've had a bump, and I think that's that's what makes us unique and helps us keep that feel.
For sure.
We can all have our differences of opinions, one day, and the next day, like I said, like a family, you're right back
Go
at
back
it,
at it and
doing what you
look
need to
out
do.
for the customer.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Because without the customer, we ain't got anything.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Well, Stacy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
People will be excited to see your mug.
They'll be just thrilled to
now
see
what
it.
you don't know is that we've already planned for a big billboard in
Yeah.
Lebanon to
Out
be
here
set
on
up
I-65.
for,
That'll be
right there.
Stacy.
He was on the billboard once, I
You're
think.
going to put a translation at the bottom for everything I was to say.
Yeah,
I think Stacy's been on a billboard
Well,
back
they
in
beat me
those
to it.
days.
Yes, he has.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
I will say I remember a doctored billboard that I have pictures of too. So
He was a part of the Magnificent Seven.
I think so.
700
yeah,
guys.
at that time frame, there's
That was a pretty good ad campaign, I think.
it was.
It was.
well, we'll have to dig up some of that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
forgotten about that.
Yeah. I'll show you the doctored one from the fine folks at Wingate.
I'd like to see that. Sounds like I need to have you on the next episode that we do talking about pranks again and stuff. It'd be or stories, old stories and
Lots
pranks.
of that.
That's definitely one of the first things we tell guys when they come to work here. You better have some thick skin.
Well, that's great. Well, on that note, thank you all for listening. We appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully this was beneficial to you, especially if you're maybe a younger person looking to get into the ag industry, whether you come to Bane Welker or not, but just learning that having a good attitude is really the majority of the game. It's not about what position you hold or title that you may have on a piece of paper, but how you go to work every day. So again, Stacy, thank you. And Dad, Jason, thank you. And until next time, farmers out there, keep on farming, businessmen keep on working, and when we come back around, we'll keep on plowing. Thanks.